Also, when you're looking at the way you said it already in some ways that your customers are family and they're and I used to call them critical friends. For me, customers are everything. Ultimately, I still class some of them as I've probably said it about 1,000 times actually on these videos, on these fireside chats. That basically, I really truly believe that most of the people I know, who were customers, I just see them as critical friends at that point, and now they're basically friends. I don't need not necessarily the critical piece anymore, maybe sometimes, but most of the time friends. So, that's a really good place to be, I think, especially in the education market. I think that's where, where people want to be. They want to be able to help. I've never known a market where they just want to be listened to. They want to explain why it's important, but all of it with the underlying goal of making sure that kids have, are educated better, which is ultimately the most important thing, or children being educated better. Your mindset and the way that you reach out to your customers is through advocacy a lot of the time, and you do a number of things which are freemium as well. Is that right?
Yeah, we made a decision years ago. I mean, I think we did bet maybe 3-4 years in. So there'll be companies out there looking at things like that, deciding whether to go. And I'm not making any comment on whether those are good or bad, because I think every company has to decide what works best for them. I think I'm very conscious that when you stood on a stand, and you unfortunately you get into the habit, don't you, of looking at the name badges as they walk by, because what you're looking for is maybe that killer combo of maybe a head and the bursar together, or the CEO of an organization with their finance director, and it's student day, and you don't really want to be sort of choosing whether to talk to people based on who they are. And as an attendee, I'd always turn the badge around so that people couldn't do that, and I never want to get scanned. It felt very impersonal. Whereas actually being at the same show, but going to sit down having a coffee and just saying to someone who's also sit down, how are you finding bet today? And an informal chat would very often lead to, oh, really? Oh, wow, we got some free tools that can help with that. And before you know it, they became much more relational conversations rather than, and it's hard, isn't it? I mean, there's some great products and services out there, but the moment you put a stand and a suit on and try and grab people and then go by, it's hard. A lot of events you go to, you can have a stand in between the workshops. And of course, when people leave workshops, they want to grab a coffee, go and talk to their friends, go to the toilet. It's very, very hard to grab them. So what we thought we'd do is, using a lot of the innovation we did, is we built some really clever tools. Watchstead, which takes Ofsted data and shows it on, there's a free site, watchstead.com, like, watch and stead like Ofsted. And we give away all sorts of keywords search across inspection reports. We update the analysis on there 3 times a day. So we give you the league table of all the local authorities, which is an updated version of the Ofsted once a year annual snapshot. Yeah. And we did all that, and it got a lot of attention, got a lot of people contacting us, including regional schools commissioners, MATs, can you help with? And we suddenly realized that, this bit of innovation that we've done and that we'd chosen to spend and invest some of our time in was a really good way of getting people to come to us. So just like the circus was attracting people physically, we also wanted to take some of our products we built. One of them was a school improvement toolkit. I think let's give away some of the bits in there, and let's make it something that local authorities can use to send comms and secure file collection, data analysis reports. And we ended up with 20,000 schools with this free Perspective Light account. Amazing. And it's been great, because then you put another little bit of stuff in this. So okay, you can get this free stuff over there publicly without signing up. But if you log into your Perspective Light account, you'll also get the extras with infographic creators that turn your census data into this beautiful one-page infographic, being able to look up your inspector. I mean, it's been such a godsend to us for people saying, oh, I spend hours Googling my inspector when I get the call. We say, don't waste time doing that. Just look them up, get what you need to know, and then say, right, let's focus now on getting our school ready, getting our self-evaluation or evidence ready, preparing the staff. Don't waste time Googling your inspector. It's a nonsense. But to help reduce that amount of time, that inspector profile tool was another example of tools that we've built that you can't get anywhere else, that people tend to talk about. And that's how we ended up with 20,000 schools. So in a good way, Nick, we're able to on log in or log out, or in the news area there, we're able to say, hey, we're doing a Mary Mart webinar with Balance. You're more than welcome to come. Or, would you like to try our other new free tool, Balance Lite, a curriculum tool that will help you with the catch-up curriculums? And it's just been a lovely, softly, gently way of being able to get lots of schools who are now using our free products to be much more aware of events we do, or other products we do. So probably every day we get 2 or 3 requests for demos. Sometimes we'll get a head who's moved to another school. We just had one, funny enough, again today. I've just moved to another school. I like your product in the new place. Send us an invoice and off you go. It's not living the dream, guys. For anyone watching this, it is a 22-year overnight success story. So, it does take time to build this, but a lot of that came from the decision to A, innovate, but B, then also almost decide to choose to give some stuff away for free. And that does come at a cost. There is still the support of that. We accept that lots of people are quite happy with the free stuff we give them and don't want anything else. And that's okay. That's all part and parcel of it. But I think in the main, it's been good for us in terms of at least being able to offer something for free, with maybe the only barrier that we all go, what's the catch? So sometimes you can say to your blue in the face, this really is free. And it's sometimes really hard to get that across to somebody. And then you usually get the, why didn't I know about this before? How come we didn't use this earlier? We're saying, well, it's been there a long time, but sometimes people are super busy, don't always get a chance to explore what's out there, do they?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think there's a fine balance as well, isn't there, between, so you're obviously offering something for value, because otherwise you wouldn't have 22,000 customers. So they're obviously getting value from the free parts of the solution, that, the freemium model, I guess, that they're basically taking on board, which is brilliant. But in some cases, I think, with not necessarily yours, but with other businesses, sometimes offering something for free means that people don't necessarily appreciate it enough. We definitely sent some, did some stuff which was quite innovative in some cases, but when you offer it for free, nobody really saw it or found it because they hadn't actually bought it, so they didn't actually use it. So I'm guessing you must do quite a bit of work on getting people to still use the software, or do you just find, because it is such an important, like Ofsted as an example, it's so important when it comes round to an inspection, that they automatically just use it. They know they need to use it because there's no other tool, as you said there before. Or do you have to do a lot of work to get people to understand it's there?
Yeah, years ago I came up with this acronym called Mufasa. It must have been straight after the Lion King or something. And it was basically designed for all of our guys internally to think of what are some of those common things that we can do to try to get people, I think any software provider wants that stickiness.
Yeah.
So the M was for modules. If a piece of software's got 9 or 10 modules, the more modules you can get being used, that the more embedded it will become. U was for users. So, sometimes you'd have just a head using your product. So, ideally get the SLT using it, or all staff to use it, because then you don't have a single point of failure. The F for Mufasa was frequency. So not once a year. They'll forget about it for the next 11 months. Could it be a daily thing, a weekly, fortnightly? And if you're an ed tech provider out there, I think you have to accept that, performance management, for example, September to October. And okay, there'll be some check-ins throughout the year. A CEF or an Ofsted thing. Ideally, that's maybe only once every 3-4 years. No head teacher gets up every morning and thinks, oh, I'd love to update my CEF today. But, where there is that sort of, I'm on the amber alert, can we get ready? Then sometimes tools have a seasonality about them, but certainly frequency, which is why we have, LA data, we have news, we have tools that help with governor meetings or school improvement visits. What we're trying to do is almost bombard that year-long school improvement cycle with lots of different touch points. So whether it's observations, whether it's planning, so the targets, and RAG rate your targets, we make it easier to do all that stuff. But sometimes when you've got a piece of software out there, if it's just a one thing, then of course sometimes that one thing may not be something that gets used a lot. I've seen some beautiful curriculum tools out there, maybe music or workshops, and sometimes you think, well, that's probably taught for 2 days a year, and it's a foundation subject, and music and art, I love all those subjects, but it's very, very hard to get through to someone and say, we've got this really awesome piece of software or service, because I think the things that have really hummed over COVID, I mean, the remote parents evenings, I think was genius idea.
Yeah.
You know, I think that will definitely be here to stay after COVID. I think it works great for parents. And I know there's a number of providers out there, some famous ones, and others are following suit. I just think that's a nice disruptive bit of software there. That's probably something that people are going to keep going with.
Yeah.
So freemium works well, but I think you're right. We stopped giving trials of our software away a long time ago, because in the main, people don't actually have time to log in. And 3 months later, you'd be looking at the stats going, they didn't even log in, and we did the demo, we shared the stuff. And I think if you're honest about yourself as an ed tech provider, you know, if you think about walking down the street and you came up to me and gave me a leaflet for something, I think often we're polite, you know, yeah, and then it will go in the bin at the first opportunity. I think those phrases, can you send me some more information? Can you send me a brochure? Is in the education sector, that's a polite, sorry, I'm not interested, isn't it? And so I think there's better, cleverer questions to ask than that, you know, of what I've showed you today, you know, is that actually going to make a difference in your school? You know, if I can set you up a login, but have you actually got the time to do that? Is there somebody else in your organization who might be better to trial or test this out? Or should we actually book in another date in 2 weeks' time now, so that, you know, you've got that 2-week window rather than me chasing you for the next 3 months? All intelligent questions like that are trying to lead much more to okay, recognizing you're busy, how can we get this free piece of software to actually be validated by you, so that whether you want to upgrade to the paid version or even to roll out the free version, you're putting something in your diary. You're not just saying, well, I'm really interested now, but actually I've got 1,000,001 things that need my attention straight after this. It's really hard to get someone's attention once they've left a stand, left a Zoom. It's really difficult. They've got an unenviable task at the moment. I don't know how they're doing it. And literally, I'll take my hats off to anyone working in schools right now. It's the biggest challenge I can remember in 22 years.
Yeah, no, I'm with you completely. And I think, you know, and going back to the value piece, or actually the way you talk to the customer base, in the sense that it's more consultative. And I think that is really important. You know, there's lots of businesses that, we've spoken to, worked with, and some of those businesses just expect, because they go, well, I've got a very innovative solution. I spent lots of time and energy into this. Surely they just come. It's like, no, that's not how it works. You need to demonstrate your worth and your value. And unfortunately, you're going to have to understand the needs and target the right people who have those needs if you want your solution to be talked about, or even, that. And that's just again to the point of building awareness. But yeah, I totally agree. I think it's interesting that you approach it in that more consultative way, because that's something we definitely believe in. It's an important piece for sure.
One of the things we did build probably, I don't know, years ago now, was an internal intelligence tool. We call it PAT. It stands for Project Absolute Truth. And what we try and do is build all sorts of data points for ourselves. So for example, if someone was using Perspective and they were doing their performance management every year, typically we know it's going to get hammered in September and October when they actually do that cycle. But often we'd see patterns of setting up those performance review meetings, maybe May or June, or closing down the last one. So we could build tools that would go, oh, do you know what? It's the end of June, July, and no one set up any performance management, whereas they normally do. And it would go ding-a-ling-a-ling. And it would, rather than somebody sitting there with 1,000 customers trying to ring them all to see if they're okay, it would help, little things like if you hadn't logged in for 30 days, you could get a little friendly prompt. Those can be annoying sometimes, can't they? But personalized as much as possible. And 60 days later, it's going, wow, they still haven't logged in. Is everything okay? Have we upset you? Have you forgot your password? But then after that, would always escalate to a human. So somebody here could go, let's go and investigate that one. So where possible, I think we do try and get systems to try and nudge people. Head teachers change all the time. And, the old EduBase, new GIS is not always up to date. But so even finding out that there's a new leader or the leader in the school has left can be paramount to the success of software moving forward, because often a new head coming in will want to take to bring their systems with them from another school, which we obviously benefit when they go. But equally, we've lost schools sometimes because understandably, the leader comes in and knows the systems in their last school and wants to embed those. So those are early warning signs. So we've built an awful lot of intelligence that, lets us look at the head teachers' names using our product, what's on GIS, what's in the public domain, and highlight where there might be, there's a customer of ours, we think there's a new head there, somebody give them a call. And I think all those things are the things you have to do, whether you've got free or paid for products, as you will know, Nick, as well.
Oh, amazing. No, it's interesting. We talk about it being frictionless. So it's very much a case, how do you reduce the friction for customers to get to value? And that includes, as you just said, if a head teacher changes, how do you get to the point where the other head teacher automatically understands this is the value you can get from having this piece of software? Because you're right, they I think in education, and in part of it's to do with time, part of it's because their priority is, the children in their care rather than the solutions that are around it. It's very easy to say, I got enough from the solutions I had in my old school, so actually let's just replicate those, and then I know I can continue the job I did in the last school. But actually, they might be missing out on the additional value that your solutions can provide. So getting that sort of frictionless sort of process in where, obviously you understand that there's a new head teacher in, which is brilliant, and then be able to identify and show value. I think that is really important. And I think even from a new sale perspective, getting to the point of from awareness all the way through the selling process to value, I think is really important.
And that's why it's so important to embed it across the rest of the staff, because I think a new head coming in where all the staff are going, we never really used it, it was only there because the last head made us, is very different proposition to don't change the system. We're all trained up on this. We love it. It's brilliant. And that's the goal, I think, for all of us, isn't it? Is to get the product that even if you do get a disruptive change, like a head changing, or even joining a MAT, that's probably been since the arrival of MATs. That can often be a change. We've had schools who love using our systems join a MAT where they're all using, Google Docs, and they say, it's okay, stop using that, but it's great. And, our challenge over these last 3 or 4 years has been to do the same thing we've done for every LA and 20,000 schools with the MATs. So we've got, a MAT Toolkit. It's like a CRM for MATs. It's got all sorts of unique things in there. The Ofsted intelligence. It's got contact management. It's got a KPI tool. It is brilliant. It aggregates data up from schools. Our biggest challenge is when you got something for free, and MATs are newer to us, is that we want to do that because we don't want schools moving to a MAT and the MAT going, I don't know what that is. I'd much rather they went, hang on a minute, this is really good. And I think now, Nick, we're starting to see more and more dealing with the trust. Now he's got 6 of their 14 schools already using our product at school level. And of course, they're saying, well, we should just roll this out to the rest of the schools. So I think if you can do that, if you're listening to this, get a really good relationship with a school that's already in a trust. Sometimes that's a great way of getting to know the trust, because they'll mention it at the meetings, or other schools will start to say, oh, what's that you're using? And if you've got something that supports the trust as well, makes it something that gives them the intelligence that they need, I think that can work really well. In the old days, it would be local authority rollouts. We would have primary schools across the whole LA buying our systems through the LA, whereas those days are very few and far between now. Budgets being what they are, and MATs is the new landscape. So, we've got to do that same job with the MATs as we've done with schools and LAs.
No, great advice. No, I agree with that, Andy. And actually going from that point then, so education, the actual marketplace, especially for management tools, I guess, if we looked at the whole sort of management proposition, there's a lot of change. There's lots and lots of change in education from, you're right that, I know the MATs have been going on for a long time, and so have academies, but it's now 60% of the marketplace is now academized, so, that they're only going to get bigger. All the rhetoric coming from government says they're just going to get bigger as well. So the MATs there's not just going to be more MATs, there's going to be bigger MATs. We've also got things like COVID has just happened. So actually, in some ways, that might be seen as a positive. So more technology has gone into schools, that schools understand the value of blended learning and using the tools to support that. What would you say is at the moment the biggest challenges for EdTech companies, and what would you advise them to be doing right now? In the sense of, and one of the things that you just said, you have to be talking or showing value to MATs. What other things can you do you think are important to the ed tech industry?
I think probably right now, this year especially, it feels like there's an awful lot of focus on MATs going out to tender for MIS.
Yeah.
We've actually had several MATs approach us, have demonstrations of our products, which none of us are MIS, so I can speak freely about this. We don't make an MIS. Talk to any MIS provider out there, and we do. They're saying, right, we would love to do this right now, but we're right in the middle of either going out to tender or rolling out an MIS. Now, word of advice to anyone out there is if you're not providing an MIS right now, there may well be a season where you've just got to wait out those big transformational changes. So I think it's great to have, you know, the variety that's out there. And I think I noticed there was a blog on your website, Nick, about, you know, people should be even checking what's in their MIS rather than just going out to buy all these, you know, shiny add-ons. I think what we're seeing is much more of a centralization around that MIS. And we're seeing a lot of those companies out there in the sector being acquired, and everyone's sort of jostling for position to have that MIS right at the core of what they do, but then also to have all the necessary wraparound, whether that's parental comms, whether that's cashless systems. And there's obviously a number of providers out there that do them, and some of them do it really, really well.
Yeah.
Regardless of how good all those products are, I think the biggest challenge for a lot of schools is you can hate your existing product, love it, and whether you're being forced to move to another one because you're part of a MAT or whether you choose to, that is a big upheaval. And of course, companies help with that. They'll help with the migration of data, you know, implementation plans. They've got to be good at that. But I think we've all got used to, I don't know, Facebook or Microsoft Office over the years where suddenly they change something, don't they? Do you remember when that ribbon came along and we were like, where's page setup gone? You multiply that amongst a very, very busy, stressed, overworked teaching force who are not sat at the computer all the time and just want to jump on in lunch or, you know, to do their PPA or even at home. Those can be real frustrations.
Yes.
And so I think, you know, we're having to bide our time to wait for some of that churn to die down, because it would be foolish for anyone to say, right, well, we're changing our MIS and we're also launching 4 or 5 new products. Staff would just you know, collapse.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I think is to be mindful of is, as MATs look to grow, there's going to be a challenge there, because if you're, say, a MAT with 10, 15 schools, you can go out to tender now. You can, you know, buy into the same provider, and hopefully you've got tools that then talk to each other at the MAT level. The trouble with that is every time you look to acquire another school, you ideally need them to already be on that MIS, because otherwise there's a bit of a barrier. Oh, we'd love for you to join us, but you're going to make us change MIS. And so I think more and more we're certainly seeing that for us sitting lovely in the middle is we can aggregate data up from any MIS. Yeah. And therefore we're not looking to replace or compete with MIS providers out there. But I think it's also worth noting that if you're a MAT and you want to grow out there, sometimes the shift of MIS might not be timing wise good for a school this year. So if you are serious about growing, you either need to be thinking about, does that limit your choices of schools that are going to join your MAT? Or what's your policy going to be as and when schools do join if they're not using your MIS, and how are you going to get that attendance data real time if they're not using that common system? So I still think we're going to have a bit of fun and games, because not everyone's in a MAT right now. There's still a lot of churn out there. There's still maintained primary schools. You know, so it's going to be a really interesting time. And I don't envy anyone at school level having to deal with all that churn, because there's enough instability in the sector as it is right now anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. It's interesting because we talked to MATs as well, and you get this situation where, you know, a school that does come on board is with another system, and it's like a case of, well, in a year's time we're migrating across. They don't normally migrate straight away because of all the other challenges and priorities that the schools got at that point in time by moving underneath a particular MAT.